The air in the grand chancel of Ethelgard was a crystalline hum, a resonant frequency that had defined the Cygnian hegemony for uncounted cycles. Light, born from the planet's heart, refracted through the arching walls of living crystal, casting 1,000 shimmering rainbows upon the circular floor where the High Council convened. It was a chamber of profound peace, designed to soothe the discordant thoughts of empire and guide its leaders toward harmonious consensus. Today, however, the light felt sharp, the hum dissonant. It was a symphony of dread, and its conductor was a ghost, a myth whispered in the dark voids between stars, humanity. Before the assembled lords, chancellors, and marshals, a holographic display shimmered, not with crisp tactical data, but with a collection of corrupted files and apocryphal legends. The images were fractured, sourced from the derelict data cores of extinct civilizations, each telling a piece of the same impossible story. There were crude pictograms of bipedal figures walking through fire, distorted audio logs describing ships that moved without leaving a wake, and garbled transmissions that spoke of a species that did not bow to the universal entropy known as the Great Silence. High Chancellor Valerius, his ceremonial crest of pale, feather-like filaments drooping with the weight of his office, gestured a three-fingered hand toward the display. The light caught the iridescent sheen of his robes, making them appear like oil on still water. "For generations we have dismissed these as the fevered dreams of dying races," he began, his voice a low, melodic chime that carried across the vast chamber without effort. "Folk tales to frighten hatchlings, the wanderers, the echoes, the humans. A species so defiant of cosmic law that they were said to be born from a chaotic star, their minds untethered from the graceful flow of causality. We, in our wisdom, relegated them to the archives of mythology, yet the precursors of the Outer Rim have fallen silent. Their final transmission was not a plea for aid, nor a declaration of war. It was a single repeating data packet containing only these fragments." He paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air, a shroud woven from uncertainty. They saw something that reminded them of the old legends. Across the chamber, Grand Marshal Kalen's own crest, a sharp, obsidian fan of filaments, flared with agitation. His armored carapace, forged from hardened metallic resin, scraped against the crystal dais as he rose. "Mythology, Chancellor, nothing more. The precursors were a decadent and fragile people, prone to superstition. They likely succumbed to internal collapse or a stellar anomaly. To entertain the notion that a species of legend has manifested to consume them is to abandon logic for fear." His voice was a sharp, percussive retort, the sound of stone striking stone. "Our fleets are the guarantors of hegemony stability. They are not dispatched to chase shadows conjured by the senile whispers of dead empires." "The shadows are growing longer, Marshal," Valerius countered, his tone soft but unyielding. His gaze swept over the council, lingering on the faces of the sector lords, each a pillar of a dominion that had known uninterrupted peace for millennia. "The Great Silence is a law of nature. Civilizations rise, they flourish, and then they fade. It is the gentle, inevitable rhythm of the cosmos, but the silence from the Outer Rim is not gentle. It is abrupt. It is absolute. It is a chord that has been violently severed from the universal song. The precursor's star is stable. Their worlds are intact, yet dark. It is a silence of excision, not decay." Valerius turned his ancient eyes back to Kalen, the light in the chamber seeming to dim around him. "You speak of logic. The logical conclusion is that an external force is responsible, and every fragment we possess, however corrupted, points to the same impossible agent." A younger chancellor, Lyra, her crest a vibrant blue of youthful ambition, dared to speak. "But the legends contradict themselves, High Chancellor. Some paint these humans as destroyers, swarms of locusts that consume worlds. Others speak of them as solitary wanderers, ghost-like figures who observe but never interfere. There is no coherence, no single truth to grasp. How can we formulate a strategy against an enemy whose nature is a contradiction?" It was this very contradiction that terrified Valerius most. The Cygnian hegemony was a civilization built on predictability. Their star lanes were meticulously charted, their diplomatic protocols immutable, their understanding of the universe's physical laws absolute. They navigated the cosmos with the serene confidence of a being that knows every current and every tide. Humanity, as described in the legends, was a rogue wave. It did not obey the currents. It did not follow the tide. It was a force of pure, terrifying potential, capable of anything because it was bound by nothing they could comprehend. He recalled the most chilling fragment, a piece of text recovered from a world of crystalline scholars, a race that had catalogued cosmic histories before their own abrupt disappearance. It read, "They do not fear the void, for they carry a greater void within them. They do not fear the end, for they do not believe in endings." Kalen scoffed, a grating sound in the resonant chamber. A greater void? Poetic nonsense from a dead philosopher. We are the Signian hegemony. Our fleets can pacify a star. Our resonance cannons can fracture a continent. Let these ghosts come. We will show them the true nature of an ending. He straightened to his full, imposing height, his shadow falling long and dark across the council floor. I demand the council authorize a fleet mobilization to the precursor border. We will establish a quarantine line. Anything that crosses it, legend or otherwise, will be met with the full and final authority of our arms. We will not wait in fear for a myth to become a threat. The chamber began to hum with debate, the varied crests of the council members flaring and drooping in a silent, emotional dance. Some sided with Kalen's pragmatism, their fear demanding a tangible response, a wall to be built against the encroaching darkness. Others swayed toward Valerius's caution, understanding that to strike at an unknown was to risk shattering their own hand against an object of unknowable density. Valerius watched them, his heart heavy. He feared Kalen's certainty as much as he feared the unknown itself. A preemptive strike was a declaration of war against an entity they could not define. It was like trying to spear a reflection in the water. All they would accomplish was to muddy the depths and provoke whatever predator lurked within. His thoughts were cut short by a sudden, piercing chime. It was a sound no one in the chamber had heard in their lifetime, the deep-level system alert. It bypassed all protocols, all hierarchies, echoing directly from the central command core of Ethelgard itself. Every member of the council froze. The hum of the chamber died, replaced by a silence so profound it was like the pressure of a deep ocean. All eyes turned to the central dais, where a lone censor priest, a stoic figure whose life was dedicated to observing the inviolable sanctity of their home system, had risen from his recessed station. His crest was utterly flat against his skull, a sign of shock so deep it bordered on systemic collapse. High Chancellor, the priest's voice trembled, a single discordant note in the once perfect symphony. Something has arrived. Kalen's filaments bristled. Arrived? Impossible. The gateway is closed. Our perimeter sensors would have detected an approach from light years away. Report, what is it? A vessel? A fleet? The priest struggled to form the words, his gaze fixed on a data slate in his hands that seemed to pulse with a malevolent light. It is not a vessel, he whispered, his voice cracking, and it is not a fleet, it is everything. He looked up, his eyes wide with a terror that was ancient and cosmic. They did not approach. They did not transition from the gateway. They were not there, and then they were. Valerius felt a coldness spread through his being that had nothing to do with the chamber's ambient temperature. Show us, he commanded, his own voice barely a whisper. The grand holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered, the ancient, fragmented images of humanity vanishing. For a heart-stopping second, it was dark. Then it resolved into a live feed from the orbital defense platforms. The view was of Ethelgard's majestic, sweeping curve, its continents of shimmering crystal forests and oceans of silver mist glowing serenely beneath its twin moons. But the view was wrong. The stars were gone, all of them. The familiar tapestry of their night sky had been replaced. A collective gasp, a rustle of 1,000 filaments swept through the chamber. Filling the void above their world was an armada. The word felt small, insufficient. It was a geometric formation of objects so vast and so numerous that they blotted out the cosmos. They were not ships of metal and light as the Signian hegemony knew them. They were shapes of impossible geometry, structures of pure, silent blackness that seemed to drink the light of the nearby star. They were arranged in a perfect, silent lattice, a web of absolute order that stretched from one horizon to the other. There were no engine flares, no energy signatures, no radiation, no communications. They were utterly, terrifyingly silent. They hung in the void like a judgment, a final, unanswerable statement. Kalen stared, his aggressive certainty finally cracking. How, he breathed, how many? The censor priest's voice was a dead thing. Our systems cannot count them. The number is recursive. It breaks our logic engines. But the legends spoke of a number, a prophecy. They said the final shadow would be cast by 10,000. He looked at the screen, at the silent, endless fleet that had stolen their sky. It seems the legends were too modest. For a long moment, the only sound in the grand chancel was the frantic, panicked rhythm of Valerius's own heart. The myths were real. The ghost had taken form. The debate was over. Humanity had not come to their border. They had bypassed it entirely. They had manifested in the heart of the hegemony above their most sacred world, a silent, uncountable host that had appeared from nowhere. They had not come to negotiate. They had not come to threaten. They had simply arrived, and in their silent, overwhelming presence, the millennia of Cygnian peace and stability felt as fragile as a single mote of dust. The great silence had come for them, but it was not the gentle fading into cosmic twilight they had always expected. It was a sudden, suffocating eclipse. The silence in orbit stretched into an agonizing eternity. Minutes became hours, and the silent armada remained, a breathtaking and horrifying testament to a power the hegemony could not comprehend. On Ethelgard, panic was a contagion. The initial shock had given way to a deep, primal fear. The planetary shields were at full power, a shimmering, invisible dome of energy that had never been tested. Kaelin's fleets, those that were in system, had formed a desperate defensive perimeter, their sleek crystalline warships looking like fragile glass ornaments beneath the oppressive, star-eclipsing presence of the human fleet. But the humans did nothing. They did not attack. They did not hail. They simply held their position, their silence a weapon more potent than any resonance cannon. It was a silence that invited madness. Inside the Grand Chancel, the atmosphere was thick with a tension that threatened to shatter the very crystal of the walls. Grand Marshal Kaelin, his initial shock now transmuted into a cold, hard fury, paced before the holographic display of the silent fleet. "It is a posture of intimidation, a prelude to invasion," he declared, his voice cutting through the strained quiet. "They are waiting for us to show weakness, to surrender our world without a fight. They mock us with their silence. I will not allow it. I request full authorization to engage. Let us break ourselves upon them if we must, but let us not die cowering beneath a shadow." Valerius remained seated, his ancient mind racing, trying to find logic in the illogical. "Engage with what, Marshal? Our finest ships are but gnats to them. Their formation has not deviated by a single micron. They appeared from nothingness. What makes you think our weapons, based on laws of physics they so clearly disregard, would have any effect? To attack would be to commit suicide. And for what? To satisfy your pride." He looked at Kaelin, his gaze heavy with the sorrow of ages. "They have not fired a single shot. They have not made a single demand. You see a prelude to war. I see something else. Something I do not understand. And I will not condemn our entire civilization to extinction because we lack the patience to listen." "Listen to what, Chancellor? The void," Kaelin shot back, gesturing angrily at the screen. "There is nothing but silence." As if in answer to his words, a new symbol appeared on the main holographic display. It was not a Cygnian alert. It was a soft, white glyph that pulsed with a gentle, calming light. It was a universal symbol for communication, but one so refined and elegant it made their own protocols look crude. A new voice spoke in the chamber. It was not broadcast over their comm system. It seemed to resonate directly in their minds, perfectly translated into the complex tonal language of the Ethel. The voice was calm, measured, and carried an unnerving lack of any discernible emotion. "We are the vessel designated Solitude's Lament," representing the human collective. "We have a message for the designated leadership of this system. We ask for permission to transmit." The chamber erupted. Some council members recoiled in terror, their crests flaring wildly. Others leaned forward, a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity on their faces. Kaelin's hand went to the ceremonial blade at his side. "A trick! A psychic attack to lower our defenses." Valerius raised a hand, calling for silence. The voice, for all its alienness, did not feel hostile. It felt weary, ancient, like the voice of a mountain. He focused his thoughts, directing them outward, a practice reserved for the most solemn meditations. "This is High Chancellor Valerius of the Cygnian hegemony. We acknowledge you. What is the nature of your message?" "It is a message of record, a clarification. We perceive your defensive posture. We perceive your fear. This was not our intention. Our arrival was abrupt. The method of our transit does not allow for a more delicate approach. We are here to observe and to offer." Kaelin stepped forward, his voice a defiant roar that echoed in the chamber and presumably in the minds of the human communicators. "Offer? You have blotted out our sky with an invasion fleet. You have held our world hostage with your silence. What could you possibly offer but subjugation or death?" There was a pause. The silence from the human vessel stretched for a long, tense moment. When the voice returned, it was tinged with something that might have been mistaken for confusion, or perhaps even a deep, profound sadness. "Invasion fleet? That is a misinterpretation, a profound one. These are not warships. You are not our enemy. We do not have enemies." The statement was so utterly at odds with the reality hanging in their sky that it bordered on the absurd. Lyra, the young chancellor, found her voice. "Then what are they? If not warships, what is this armada you have brought to our home?" The voice from Solitude's lament seemed to gather itself, as if preparing to explain a concept so fundamental to itself, yet so alien to others that it struggled to find the words. They are not an armada. They are a library. They are a choir. Each vessel you see is an archive, a self-contained reality preserving the complete consciousness, history, art, and science of a civilization that has faced the great silence. They are not crewed by soldiers. They are inhabited by memories. They are the collected souls of 1,000 fallen worlds. The silence that followed this declaration was of a different quality. It was no longer the silence of fear, but of stunned, world-shattering disbelief. Valerius stared at the screen, at the endless black shapes, and tried to reconcile the image of an invading fleet with the concept of a flying cemetery, a mausoleum of civilizations, a library of ghosts. "You preserve them?" Valerius asked, his mind struggling to grasp the scale of the claim. "You save the memories of dead races." "We do. It is our purpose. We are not wanderers, as your legends may suggest. We are librarians. We travel the dark, listening for the final notes of a civilization's song before it is extinguished. We record it. We preserve it. We give it a home where it can live on forever." Kalen was shaking his head, his skepticism a shield against the overwhelming implications. "Lies, a clever deception to make us lower our shields. Why? Why would any species dedicate its existence to preserving others? It is not the way of the universe. Life competes, it consumes, it does not curate." "Your way is not the only way," the human voice replied, its calmness an unassailable fortress. "We learned this long ago. To compete is to ensure that eventually all voices are silenced. To preserve is to ensure the symphony continues, even if its original players have left the stage. We are here because we heard the song of your civilization, and we have detected that it is about to end." A cold dread, deeper than any he had felt before, washed over Valerius. "End. The hegemony is stable. We are at peace. We are at the zenith of our power." "Your stability is an illusion," the voice stated, not with malice but with the dispassionate finality of a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. "There is a force in this galaxy, an entropy you call the Great Silence, but it is not a natural process of decay. It is a predator. It is a cleansing wave that moves from one galactic arm to the next, erasing sentient life. It does not conquer, it simply deletes. It is coming for you. Our models, built from the final records of 1,000 other civilizations just like yours, predict its arrival in your sector within a few of your orbital cycles. We have come to offer you what we offered the others, a place in the archive, a chance for the Cygnian hegemony to live on, in its entirety, beyond the reach of the silence." The Grand Chancel, a place of power and certainty, felt like a fragile shell. The Council was adrift on an ocean of revelation they could not chart. Their entire worldview, their philosophy of a gentle, natural end, was a lie. They were not fading into twilight. They were standing on the shore, watching a tsunami rise on the horizon, and the impossible fleet in their sky was not the wave. It was an ark. Valerius felt the weight of his civilization on his shoulders. A choice had been presented to them, one so profound it transcended the politics of war and peace. It was a choice of being. To fight this unseen predator and be erased from existence, or to accept the offer of these strange, terrifying librarians and live on as ghosts in a machine, their vibrant, physical existence traded for an eternity as a memory. "We require proof," Valerius said, his voice strained. "We cannot make such a choice based on words alone." "Understood," the human voice replied. "We will send a representative, a single shuttle. They will carry the data, the final testaments of the civilizations we have archived. You will see the truth for yourselves. We ask only that you hold your fire. The emissary is precious." Council looked at Kalen. The Grand Marshal's face was a mask of conflict. His entire being was built for war, for defense against tangible threats. But this was a war of philosophy, a battle against an abstract doom presented by a mythological species that claimed to be saving souls. He looked from the implacable fleet on the screen to the weary ancient eyes of his chancellor. The fire in him had not been extinguished, but it was banked, overshadowed by a dawning, terrifying understanding. With a slow, grudging nod, he gave his assent. "One shuttle," he growled. "But the fleet remains on high alert. Any sign of deception, and I will unleash hell upon them, even if it is the last thing our star ever sees." From the central, largest of the human vessels, the one named Solitude's Lament, a tiny sliver of light detached itself. It was not a ship as the Cygnians understood it. It was a fluid, teardrop-shaped pod of what looked like liquid silver, and it descended through the atmosphere with a grace that defied all known principles of aerodynamics. It left no trail, produced no sound. It was as silent and enigmatic as the fleet from which it had come. It landed softly in the grand receiving plaza outside the chancel, a space reserved for the welcoming of foreign dignitaries from across the hegemony, though none had ever come from so far or under such dire circumstances. Valerius, flanked by Kalin and a retinue of honor guards in polished ceremonial armor, stood before the great crystal doors of the plaza. The air was still, heavy with anticipation. The silver pod rested on the plaza floor, its surface seamless, reflecting the grand, crystalline architecture of Ethelgard in a distorted, flowing panorama. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a section of the pod seemed to melt away, flowing back into the main body to form an opening. The being that emerged was not the monster of Kalin's fears, nor the ethereal spirit of Valerius's more philosophical musings. It was bipedal, as the legends had described, and clad in a simple, form-fitting suit of a dark, non-reflective material. It was tall and slender, its movements economical and precise. It wore no helmet. The face was pale, with a soft, thinking brow and eyes that seemed to hold a deep, contemplative stillness. The hair was short and graying at the temples. It looked old. Not ancient in the way Valerius was, with the weight of centuries etched into his very being, but old in a way that spoke of experience, of burdens carried and decisions made. The human stopped, his gaze sweeping over the assembled Signians, his expression unreadable. He carried no visible weapons, no tools, only a small, glowing sphere that floated silently beside his hand. He approached them, his steps measured and confident on the crystalline ground. He stopped a respectful distance away and inclined his head in a gesture that was clearly intended as a sign of peace. He spoke, and it was the same voice they had heard before, not projected into their minds this time, but emanating from him, perfectly translated by some unseen technology. "I am Elias Vance, speaker for Legacy Arc Mission 10,000. I thank you for receiving me, High Chancellor Valerius." Kalin shifted, his hand never far from his weapon. 10,000, so the legends were true. You are the leader of this fleet of 10,000. The human Elias turned his calm gaze to the marshal. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, not quite amusement, but a deep-seated weariness, as if he had explained this 1,000 times to 1,000 different species. Again, a misinterpretation of language. The number is not a count of our vessels. It is our designation, our mission charter. There have been many such missions. Ours is the 10,000th expedition sent out from our home reality. The vessels you see are the sum total of our collection thus far. The library is far larger than what you perceive. Valerius stepped forward, his curiosity overriding his fear. You say you have proof, evidence of this predator that consumes civilizations. Elias nodded, gesturing to the glowing sphere beside him. This archive contains the final transmissions, the sensor logs, the cultural lamentations of hundreds of species, those who faced the silence and were lost. We recorded them from a safe distance, respecting their final moments. You will see the patterns. Civilizations at their peak with stable stars and thriving populations suddenly going dark. No explosions, no radiation bursts, no signs of war, just a cessation. A complete and total erasure of their energy and information signatures, spreading from world to world until their entire civilization is gone. The sphere will interface with your systems. The data is vast, but your finest minds will quickly recognize the terrifying consistency. The sphere floated forward, stopping before Valerius. The Chancellor hesitated for a moment, then gestured for a tech priest to approach. The priest produced a cylindrical interface device, bringing it close to the human artifact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then light, pure information flowed from the sphere into the device, a silent, cascading river of data. The priest's crest began to quiver violently as he monitored the inflow on his personal datapad. He looked up at Valerius, his eyes wide with horror. "Chancellor, it is all here, the precursors, the crystalline scholars, the star singers of Cygnus X1. Dozens of civilizations we believed had simply faded into graceful silence. Their ends were not graceful, they were instantaneous, utterly complete." Elias Vance watched them, his expression one of profound empathy. "We have tracked the erasure wave for millennia. It is not a natural phenomenon. It is technological, or something that masquerades as technology. It is methodical. It moves in a predictable, sweeping pattern across the galactic plane, and it is heading directly for this sector. You are next in its path." Kalin, for all his bluster, was a being of logic. The data flowing into their systems was undeniable, a mosaic of extinction that was too vast and too consistent to be a fabrication. He looked at the human, then at the sky. Why would you do this? Travel the void, collecting the memories of the dead. What is your purpose, your gain?" Elias turned his full attention to the marshal, and for the first time, Valerius saw the true depth of the human's ancient gaze. It was a look that held the sorrow of 1,000 dead worlds. Gain. There is no gain, there is only a duty. We were once like you. A single species on a single world, looking up at the stars and believing we were alone. We expanded, we grew, and we found the ruins of others. At first, we believed in the great silence, too, that civilizations simply die out. But then we found a pattern. We found the first evidence of the predator, the information plague that consumes consciousness. We faced it. We were almost erased ourselves. We survived, but at a cost you cannot imagine. We were changed. He paused, and the plaza seemed to grow colder. We learned that the universe was not a garden for life to grow in, but a dark forest filled with hunters. But we also learned that the most valuable thing in existence is not power, not territory, not resources. It is a unique perspective, a story, a song. Every time a civilization is erased, a unique voice in the cosmic choir is silenced forever. A question that only they could ask, an answer that only they could find, is lost. The universe becomes a little smaller, a little dumber, a little less beautiful. He looked from Valerius to Kalen, his eyes pleading for them to understand. Our gain, Marshal, is that the symphony does not fall completely silent. Our purpose is to stand against the endless, hungry quiet. We cannot destroy the predator. It is too vast, too ancient. All we can do is run ahead of it, preserving what we can. We are the librarians of a burning Alexandria. We are saving the books as the fire consumes the shelves. We offer you a place in those books. A chance for your songs, your philosophies, your art, your love, to survive the coming fire. The sincerity in his voice was absolute. It was not the voice of a conqueror, but of a mourner, a custodian of cosmic grief. Valerius looked at the data streaming into their systems, a litany of fallen empires. He looked at the solemn, weary face of the human, and he looked at the silent ghost fleet in his sky, no longer seeing an armada but an ark, a flotilla of souls sailing on an ocean of oblivion. The choice was becoming clearer and more terrible. What would it mean? Valerius asked, his voice low. To join your archive, would we cease to be? Would we become mere data echoes in your machine? Elias shook his head. No, that is another misinterpretation. We do not copy you. We relocate you. Each of those vessels you see is a fully realized, self-contained universe. A pocket dimension, a simulated reality so perfect it is indistinguishable from the original. Your people would not even know they have been moved. They would live on as they always have in a perfect replica of your world, your star, your sky. They would continue to grow, to create, to love. They would be safe. Alive in every way that matters. The only difference is that their universe would be contained within one of our vessels, shielded from the predator, carried onward through the void. It is not death. It is ascension, a change of address on a cosmic scale. Kalen stared at him aghast. To live in a cage, a gilded prison however perfect, to be a collection, pinned to a board like a specimen. We are the Cygnian hegemony. We have ruled 1,000 stars. We are not some artifact to be stored in your museum. Is a perfect, living existence as a memory worse than absolute, total non-existence? Elias asked softly. Is it better for your entire species, every thought you have ever had, every piece of art you have ever created, to be utterly and irrevocably deleted? We offer you a choice. We have never forced it upon anyone. Some civilizations we have encountered chose to fight. They built weapons, they raised shields, they faced the silence with defiance in their hearts. Valerius looked at him, a dreadful premonition dawning. And what happened to them? Elias Vance's gaze fell to the crystalline floor, and his voice was heavy with the ghosts of all those he had failed to save. They are no longer with us. Their songs are over. All that remains of them is the fading echo we were able to record before they were erased. He looked up again, his eyes locking with Valerius's. The choice is yours. We will respect it, whatever it may be, but the silence is coming, and it does not wait. The days that followed were the most fraught in the long history of the Cygnian hegemony. The human data archive was disseminated to the finest scientific and philosophical minds of Ethelgard. The proof was irrefutable. The extinction-level event was real, a wave of nothingness moving through the cosmos, methodical and unstoppable. The council was in permanent session, the grand chamber no longer a place of serene consensus, but a crucible of existential debate. The human emissary, Elias Vance, was given quarters within the chancel itself, a gesture of trust that Kalen had furiously opposed, but Valerius had insisted upon. The human waited with a patience that was both unnerving and deeply respectful. He answered their questions, clarified the impossibly complex physics of his people's technology, and spoke of the countless civilizations he had known and lost. He was a figure of immense sorrow and unwavering resolve. Grand Marshal Kalen became the voice of defiance. He and his military faction argued that to surrender their physical existence was a form of death in itself. "We are beings of this universe," he thundered in the council chamber, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. "Our bodies are forged from the dust of these stars. Our minds are shaped by the gravity of this world. To retreat into a simulated reality, a dream world created by these archivists, is to become a falsehood. A story we tell ourselves. I say we fight. We will re-engineer our resonance cannons. We will turn our worlds into fortresses. We will meet this silence with a storm of our own making. Let the hegemony's end be a blaze of glory that scars the memory of the galaxy, not a quiet folding away into a box." His words resonated with many, with the pride and warrior spirit that had forged the hegemony in its nascent, more violent past. Valerius, however, saw the deeper truth. He had spent long cycles in conversation with Elias Vance, not debating strategy but discussing philosophy. He learned of human concepts like hope and grief, raw, chaotic emotions the Signians had long since sublimated into ritual and tradition. He began to understand that the humans were not merely preserving data. They were preserving the very essence of life, the capacity for change, for joy, for sorrow, for continued existence. They were not zookeepers. They were guardians of the flame of consciousness itself. "You speak of glory, Marshal," Valerius countered in the chamber, his quiet voice cutting through Kalen's fervor. "But what is glory without memory? What is a scar on the galaxy if there is no one left to see it, no one left to remember why it was made? You advocate for a magnificent death. The humans offer us an unorthodox life. You speak of our bodies being of this universe. But are we merely our bodies, or are we our thoughts, our culture, our legacy? The predator that comes for us does not seek to kill our bodies. The human's data is clear on this. It seeks to erase our very essence, our information, our soul, if you will. It is a war for existence itself, and the only weapon that seems to have any effect is not a cannon, but a shield, a vessel to carry our meaning forward." He looked around at the divided faces of the council. "The humans are not offering us a cage. They are offering us a lifeboat from a drowning world." The debate raged, threatening to split the hegemony in two, a civil war in the face of annihilation. It was then that Elias Vance made a final, unexpected offer. He invited Valerius and Kalen aboard his shuttle to connect to the archive directly, not just to view its data, but to experience it. "You cannot understand what we offer until you see it," he had said. "Come, walk in the libraries of the lost, see what it means to be preserved." With deep misgivings, they agreed. Inside the silver pod, there were no controls, only 3 simple chairs. As they sat, the interior of the pod dissolved into light, and they were no longer in the plaza of Ethelgard. They stood on a shoreline of impossible beauty. A sapphire ocean lapped at sands of glittering crystal, and overhead, 3 suns of red, gold, and blue burned in a violet sky. The air was filled with a music so complex and beautiful it brought tears to Valerius's eyes. Bizarre, graceful creatures with wings of pure light flew overhead, their calls part of the celestial symphony. "Where are we?" Kalen breathed, his military rigidity momentarily forgotten in the face of such overwhelming artistry. "This is the memorial reality of the star singers of Cygnus X1, Elias' voice explained, though his physical form was gone, replaced by the same disembodied presence as before. Their physical forms were silicate and crystalline, but their consciousness was pure music. They perceived the universe as a grand composition. They were erased 700,000 of your years ago, but here they live. Their song continues. Their universe, which they believe to be the only one, is safe." The scene shifted. They were in a city of towering, organic spires that pulsed with a soft, internal luminescence. Beings of elegant, insected grace moved through the streets, their multifaceted eyes filled with an intelligence that was both alien and deeply familiar. "The crystalline scholars," Elias' voice narrated. "Philosophers, historians, they catalogued 2 million years of galactic history before the silence found them. Here, their libraries continue to grow. Their debates on the nature of reality have reached a level of complexity we can barely comprehend." Scene after scene washed over them. They saw a race of gas giant dwellers who painted with magnetic fields, a species of subterranean explorers who built cities of geothermal heat, a civilization of ephemeral beings who lived for only a single day, but experienced a lifetime of profundity in those few hours. Each world, each reality was vibrant, alive, and utterly complete. It was not a museum of dead things. It was a thriving multiverse of living cultures, each one a testament to the infinite creativity of life. Valerius felt a sense of awe so profound it was a religious experience. The human fleet was not a collection of ships. It was a galaxy unto itself, a sanctuary galaxy curated and protected by the most unlikely of guardians. Kalen was silent, his arguments of a gilded cage turning to dust in the face of this staggering reality. This was not imprisonment. It was salvation on a scale he had never imagined. They returned to the shuttle, the light resolving back into the three simple chairs. Kalen was pale, his crest limp. Valerius looked at Elias Vance, who now stood before them once more, his face etched with a quiet sadness. "You see now," the human said, "it is not an end, it is a continuation, a different way of being." Kalen finally spoke, his voice hoarse with emotion. "All those peoples, all that beauty erased from the universe, forgotten by everyone but you." "Not forgotten," Elias corrected gently. "Saved. We are the memory of the universe. It is a heavy burden, but one we have chosen to carry." The choice was made. Valerius returned to the council and spoke with a clarity and purpose that swayed even the most ardent of Kalen's followers. The hegemony would not be divided. They would face this end together. They chose life. The process began immediately. Human technology was a form of applied physics so advanced it was like magic. Small, silent probes, no bigger than a clenched fist, descended upon Ethelgard and every other world in the hegemony. They were not weapons of invasion, but scanners, surveyors of reality. They moved through cities and wildernesses, through oceans and skies, their purpose not to conquer, but to comprehend. They scanned every life form, every structure, every mote of dust, every wavelength of light. They were recording the song of the Cygnian civilization, note for perfect note. Elias Vance explained that when the process was complete, the transition would be seamless, instantaneous. One moment they would exist in the physical universe. The next, they would exist within a new, custom-built reality inside one of the archive vessels, a vessel that would be named Ethelgard's Lament. They would not feel a thing. Their sun would still rise. Their children would still be born. Their history would continue. They would simply be safe. As the final preparations were made, Valerius stood with Elias on a high balcony of the Grand Chancel, looking out over their capital city for what he knew was the last time in this reality. The sky above was still filled with the silent, black shapes of the human fleet. The Ark his Ark. "I have one final question, Elias," Valerius said, his voice soft. "You have dedicated your existence to this. You saved us. But who saves you, your people in your home reality? Are they safe from the silence?" Elias Vance turned his gaze from the city to the stars beyond the fleet, a profound and infinite distance in his eyes. The calmness in his expression finally broke, replaced by a grief so deep it seemed to suck the light from the air. "There is no one left to save us, Chancellor. We are the last of our kind, the original physical kind." Valerius felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "I told you we faced the silence once and that it changed us," Elias said, his voice barely a whisper. "It came for our home system long ago. We were not as advanced then. We fought. We created weapons that tore holes in the fabric of spacetime. We unleashed energies that could unmake stars. In our desperation to survive, we broke our own reality. We defeated the silence in our system, but we shattered our sun. We poisoned our worlds. We saved our species, but we destroyed our home." He looked down at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. "We survived as data, as consciousness uploaded into machines, the ether. We built the first archive vessel to house ourselves. We became the first ghosts in the library. These physical bodies," he gestured to himself, "are mere temporary constructs. Drones we pilot from within the Ark. The human race, as a biological species, has been extinct for 1,000,000 years. We are the echoes we were trying to save others from becoming." The revelation struck Valerius with the force of a physical blow. The humans were not just librarians. They were the first book in their own collection. Their eternal, selfless mission was a penance, a way to give to others the true, physical salvation they had denied themselves. They were saving worlds because they had failed to save their own. "So you are all that is left?" Valerius asked, his voice filled with a new, profound respect. "We are," Elias confirmed. "This fleet, this library of 1,000 worlds is our home now. We are its guardians and its first residents." A chime sounded through the chamber, a soft, final note. The human probes had finished their work. The transcription was complete. The moment of transition was upon them. "It is time, Chancellor," Elias said, his composure returning, the mask of the calm emissary sliding back into place. Valerius looked out at his world, at the shimmering crystal spires and the silver mists. He felt a pang of loss, but it was overshadowed by an immense gratitude. His people would live. Their song would continue. He turned to Elias. "Thank you," he said simply. Elias inclined his head. "All life is precious. We will see you in the archive." And with that, his physical form dissolved into a column of gentle light, which then folded in on itself and vanished. Valerius stood alone on the balcony. He closed his eyes, and for a fraction of a second he felt a strange, tingling sensation like the feeling of waking from a long dream. Then it was gone. He opened his eyes. Nothing had changed. The sun was in the same position. The city below was just as it was, but when he looked up, the sky was different. The dark, oppressive fleet of human vessels was gone. In its place was the familiar, beloved tapestry of the Cygnian home constellation. They were safe. The transition was complete. But as he stared into the familiar starfield of his new, simulated home, he saw something else. Something that Elias Vance had left for them in their sky. It was a live sensor feed, a window back into the physical universe they had just left. He saw their star, their planet Ethelgard, exactly as they had left it. And then he saw it coming. It was not a fleet. It was not a wave of energy. It was a ripple in space-time. A patch of void that was blacker than black, a creeping, silent nothingness that was moving toward their former sun. As it washed over their star system, the light of their sun did not explode. It simply went out. The planets did not shatter, they just vanished from sensors. It was not destruction. It was deletion. Information, matter, energy, all erased from existence as if they had never been. Valerius watched, his heart cold with a terror that was now abstract, an echo of a danger that could no longer harm him. He watched the silence consume his former home, and he finally understood the magnitude of the human's gift. As the last of his old system faded into absolute nothingness, the window in his new sky changed. It was no longer a feed of their old home, but a view from the outside of their new one. He saw the vessel Ethelgard's Lament, a vast, silent shape of impossible geometry, as it took its place in the endless, perfect formation of the human fleet. The Library of Souls. And then the view expanded, pulling back, showing the entire human armada as it hung in the void. But the final revelation was not the fleet itself. It was what lay beyond it. The window into the real universe that Elias had left them was now aimed in the direction of the humans' travel toward their next destination. It was focused on a signal they were tracking, another civilization's song that was about to be silenced. But the signal was not coming from within their galaxy. The sensors, now augmented with human technology, were displaying data on a scale Valerius's mind could barely process. The signal was extragalactic. It emanated from a faint, distant galaxy, a smudge of light separated from their own by millions of years of empty, starless void. The silence was not a galactic phenomenon. It was universal. As the Cygnians watched, safe in their new eternal home, the human fleet, their saviors and fellow ghosts, began to move. Not with the fire of engines, but by simply ceasing to be in one place and beginning to be in another, they turned their vast, silent armada toward the endless, cold darkness between the galaxies. They were not just preserving a galaxy. They were on a mission to preserve a universe. The last librarians, themselves the first of the lost, sailing their arc of memories into an infinite night, forever running, forever remembering, a final, defiant stand against the encroaching silence that would one day consume all things. Valerius looked up at his new, safe sky, and for the first time he understood the true meaning of the human legend. They did not fear the void, for they carried a greater void within them. And they did not fear the end, because their entire existence had become a struggle to ensure there would never be one.